Yay, we're all laughing at horrible death. But I wanted to bring that in here today because, it is cute, but we're also talking about what it is to be a Christian, the marks of a Christian. And we talk a lot about, Jesus and what he's doing, but there's this crux, right? The crux is that we have all of this life, and it seems like a really long time, and then we get eternity, which is a whole lot longer. And somewhere in the middle is this divide, this great line, this death. And there are a million ways to die. But the question I wanted to bring to you today is, how are you living? Because there's a million ways to die, but there really, truly is only one way to live. But that's not very obvious. In fact, it's a lot of unobviousness. There are so many voices in our world today that tell us, oh, you should look like this, and you should act like this, and you have to buy these things. If you don't buy these things, then your life isn't worth it. You don't have all the things. You don't have the things that you should want and you should aspire to, and you should have these new things because, of course, new is better and good. And can anything good actually be sold? I don't know, but we buy in all of the time. You might remember this ad campaign. It took America by storm. How many of us had an iPod?
Because you look so fine that I really want to make you mine.
Did anybody know that band before this advertisement came on? Yeah, the hipster in me tells you that I did. I knew the band. Yes, thank you. Yes, of course. Come on. Yes. Right? Because why would you know a prototypical Australian punk band before iPod? But you knew the iPod, and all of us had one. Did anybody own a Zune? Yeah, what's a Zune, right? That was Microsoft's answer. Okay, Paul. And you know what? I still have my iPod with me, except now it makes calls and goes on the internet, right? The world tells us, hey, you need to have these things, you got to have these things, you must have these things because they're status symbols. We have status symbols all the time, right? And just in case you don't wear high heels, that's all right. There is still brand marketing for men. Oh, yeah, there's all kinds of ways in which we are to buy in order to have the better life. The better life comes because why? Because you can go and you can buy it at a boutique store where somebody will pamper you. No, this is a delusion. These are delusions that we buy into. And the biggest delusion is the one that we buy into every day, that life is satisfying and joyous and wonderful and glorious. And then what happens when everything is glorious and wonderful? No, we don't do a David Crowder and praise God for everything being glorious. We end up forgetting God. And we don't need God because we don't have any problems. And if there's problems, that's okay. That's what insurance is for. That's what our 401k is for. And there's so many voices that are coming at us and bombarding us with this message that tells us that, hey, you know what? All you need is just another buy. And what happens is John's message ends up becoming just one more voice in the sea, in the cacophony, and the deafening blows that are all of the voices in our life. Of course, John doesn't sell us anything that's going to make us look better. He proclaims Jesus the Messiah. He was emphatic when he proclaimed Jesus the Messiah. He said, he exclaimed, he cried out. He's hanging out in the world, and all of a sudden Jesus walks by, and he's with his disciples, and he does the most unfathomable thing in the world. He says, that's the guy. He says, stop following me. You don't need me anymore. Go, that's the guy. And he's got these two disciples with him, and one of them goes, oh, wait, is that the guy? I'm going to go check it out. I kind of mind-boggling here, right? These men who have been hanging out with John, and we hear in the Bible that John had disciples. He's hanging out with them, and their leader says, that's the one. And one of them says, okay, well, I'm going to stay here with John, the one who's not the one. My leader says he's not the one. My leader tells me to go follow this guy. But one of the guys that hanging out with John didn't go to check it out. It says something about who we are as people and how much we like the world that we're currently living in, even if it's not the right one. Andrew didn't do that. Andrew went to go check it out. He went to check it out, and he goes up to this guy that he says that his leader says is the one. He says, hey, I've been looking for the truth. I have literally been praying for this Messiah. He goes up to Jesus and says, are you the Messiah? He says, are you the one? And Jesus asks him this question that only Jesus could possibly ask, this beautiful question. Well, hey man, what are you looking for? Would you know it if you found it? What a wild, great question. Now, Andrew is amazed. He ends up going with Jesus. He goes back to his house. He stays with him in this room because it's late, 4 o'clock. He's probably learning from Jesus or asking him questions, peppering him with all kinds of things. If you are the Messiah, then what, then what, then what? And we know that whatever happened in that time that Andrew spent with Jesus, he was probably getting the answers he was looking for, because Andrew wanted the Messiah. He wanted this God to come into his world, because if God came into the world, then that would mean everything for Andrew. It would mean the meaning of life for Andrew. It would mean that the very thing that he's supposed to do in this world would have been revealed, and he could go and he could do it. He could go into the world, he could have everything he ever wanted. All of the small stuff would pass away. All the things that we think matter would go away. Andrew recognized that by finding this guy, this Jesus, if he was the Messiah, then that would be the answer to his prayers. Now, I want you to take a second. I want you to think about your prayers. Your last prayer. The prayer that you pray most regularly. If that were answered, would it change your entire life? Or would it mean that you just got to someplace on time? If the prayer that you lift up to God, if that wouldn't change your entire life, what does your prayer life look like? All right, we're talking about marks of a Christian. Here's one of them. What does your prayer life look like? Andrew had one prayer. He's looking for the Messiah. He found this guy, and it seemed like this was the one. Andrew was so moved and so impressed by it, when he got back home, he found his brother. He said, Simon, you got to come, man. You got to check this guy out. You got to see him. You got to talk to him, because I believe this is the guy. This is the one. And so he brings his brother along, and Simon's coming along, and Simon meets Jesus, and Jesus looks at him and says, I'm going to call you Cephas, or in the Greek, I'm going to call you Peter, which comes from Petros, which means rock. She says, I'm going to call you Peter, because on you, I'm going to lay everything that I'm about to do. I'm going to call you Peter because a house is built on a foundation, and the strength of that foundation depends on how well that house stands. And on you, I'm going to build something that's going to stand forever. I'm going to stand on your shoulders, Peter, and reach out throughout time. Thousands of years, billions of people are going to come to my word, says Jesus, because of you, Peter. My church is going to be built on you. I'm going to use that church to go through time to reach billions on top of billions of people. The sacraments, I'm going to make sure that they know who I am. I'm going to make sure that they're baptized in my name. I'm going to make sure that they spread the word in my name. I'm going to make sure that they change the world in my name. And all of this is going to happen because of you, Peter. And of course, Peter, I love Peter. Peter's just like you and I. Says, cool, man. Goes back to fishing. But think about it. Some guy walks up to you and says, the world is going to change because of you. You're not going to believe that guy. Some guy walks up to you that you've never heard before, or maybe somebody you really trust says, hey man, this guy, you got to listen to him. He says, you know what I'm going to do? Through you, I'm going to do miracles. Yeah, all right, okay, I'll wait for that day. And that's what Peter did. He went back home. He did some more fishing, because that's how he feeds himself. That's how he lives. That's how his father lived. That's probably how his fathers lived. The fathers all going back for how many generations? That's how Peter knows to live. This is the world that he lives in. You go out in the morning, you throw a net, you pull some fish up, you bring it back, you sell a few, you keep the others, you feed people, you feed yourself. This is life. This is good. This is what he did. Peter didn't do anything that you and I wouldn't have done. Maybe he cared about what Jesus had to say, but the reality was what Jesus had to say didn't fit with the world that he was living in, and so that meant that he couldn't pay attention to it. He couldn't commit. I mean, come on, Jesus, what do you really want from me? I have to work. Jesus, what do you really want from me? My family needs to eat. Come on, Jesus, I'm a fisherman. I fish. It's what I do. If you'd asked me to feed your people, I could do that. Sure, okay, yeah. Guess what? He asked him to do that, by the way. Okay, Jesus, you want me to support your mission? That's all right. That's okay. I'll just go fishing in the morning. I'll meet you. I don't know. How about on top of that mountain in a couple days? You can give a sermon up there, and I'll feed your people. There's lots of people following you. They're going to be hungry. I'll bring the fish. How about that? How about that? Is that all right, Jesus? I can't do it next week, but how about in 2 weeks? Can you give your sermon on the Mount in 2 weeks? That would be best. Because I need you to work with me, Jesus. This is not the alternative that I need, yours. I need mine, my life. Can't we get with that? Can't we get with that? Jesus, I don't want you in my life. I mean, come on, let's just get with this right now. Jesus, I don't want you in my life. I want you in the margins of my life. Jesus, I don't want you to take the first fruits. I want you to take the leftover ones. I don't want to give you my best, Jesus. I'm going to give you my leftovers. This is what Peter was saying. And this is why I love Peter. This is why I love Peter, because Peter is exactly like you and I. He has no compunction about being the human that he is. And for whatever reason, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John saw him for the person that he was and wrote it down for all of us to see. Thanks be to God, because Peter is always messing up. Constantly and regularly. And if it wasn't for Peter, we might think that to follow Jesus, we had to be something special. Peter was special, and he would become special. Hugely monumentous. Peter was the iron that Paul sharpened his wit on. Without Peter, then Paul would have written all of the things that he wrote to Romans and the Corinthians and all these other things so that we could have the theology that we have. Without Peter, we wouldn't know exactly what it is that we needed, because without Peter, Paul wouldn't have told people to stop following Peter. Peter was the first leader of the Christians in Jerusalem. When Jesus left, Peter was the one who got to be in charge. Didn't want to be. All kinds of Christians were dying at that point. You remember who was killing them? Paul. Except he was Saul at the time. Peter saw Jesus, knew Jesus, welcomed Jesus into his life, decided that he was going to serve him, going to lead Jesus' people into the world, and then what's the first thing that happens? The world attacks them and kills them. Can you imagine what people were saying to Peter when they were coming to him? Peter, my mother just got killed. My father just got stoned in public. Peter, my nephew, Stephen, just got taken down. Who's this Jesus you know? Because I don't know anybody who would try to kill me as my friend. Peter, I think you got it wrong. I don't think you know what's going on here. I think you were always wrong, Peter. And Peter said, no. This is the way. This is the way. This is the way. I've made my mistakes. I've made them. I've made lots of them. This is the way. He said that. He believed it. And he did it. Right up until they killed him. And then while they were killing him, they were going to torture him, just like they did Jesus. And you know what he said? This is the man. I mean, you can say all you want about Peter. You can say how much of a failure he was. You would be right. You would be completely right. But right up to the moment, he changed. And up to the moment of his death, they came to him and they were going to torture him. Just like they tortured Jesus, they were going to put him on a cross and they were going to torture him to death. And you know what Peter said? He said, I'm not worthy to die that way. You can't kill me in the same way that you killed Jesus. I'm not worthy to die like that. So they turned his cross upside down and tortured him that way until he died. These are the marks of being a Christian. The marks of being a Christian are not perfection. They're not even unquestioning devotion. The marks of a Christian are honesty and commitment. Being honest that God is God, and we are not. And committing that His way is the best way, is the way, the only way. And so I ask you, do you bear the marks of a Christian? Are you honest that God is your King? Are you honest that God is in your margins? You come to worship, you came here today, so I'm going to ask you the same thing Jesus asked once upon a time. What are you looking for? Who's looking at you?